And she was talking about what she calls the bus stop conversation. So basically the idea that we, before we incarnate, we have this conversation with our guides and the other people that we're going to be here with in spirit. And we sign off on various experiences, and then we come down here and do it.
Hello, and welcome to the Liminal Frequencies podcast, where we dive deep into healing frequencies from our ancestors, frequencies of the earth and stars, sound, color, and light, and all of the subtle ways that we can tap into our unique vibration to awaken the highest timeline and integrate the fullest expression of our being. Now let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the Liminal Frequencies podcast. Today we have the pleasure of speaking with Angel Marie. This is such an incredibly fun and enlivening conversation that we got to have about our journey through the Akashic Records. And I met Angel Marie in a workshop in 2022 for Sacred Awakening, which is an Akashic Records program. And I was like, we are the same person. And now we're going on such a similar path with the sound healing, the oracle, and the tarot cards, and the processes that we've been through in healing our bodies, our minds, our patterns of connecting with nourishment, inner child, and our own sustenance. And I wanted to read for you the following card that I pulled for today, which is magnetism. Magnetism has an earthly meaning, attraction of opposites, being involved in a situation against better judgment, feeling somehow responsible for something that was out of your control. Generate a positively charged self-image through conscious affirmative action. A petty annoyance builds and may become detrimental to your environment. Deflect irritation with a force field of confidence and charisma. Duality is an illusion. There is another option. Wow. The spiritual meaning of magnetism. Love is a magnetic force that extends from the heart of all living beings. Love is both a protective shield and a powerful attractor. It is at the center of the flow of your life. A word, a thought, a touch is all it takes for love to ignite. When it does ignite, it radiates from your core, stretching out beyond your horizons. And we drop into this interview where we connect with our inner magnetism and radiance. I hope you enjoy the show. Thank you so much for joining us on the Liminal Frequencies podcast, Angel. Welcome.
Thank you. So excited to be here.
Yeah, so excited to have you here. And for those of you who don't know, me and Angel were together in the Sacred Awakening retreat with Amy Robeson, both of our teacher in the Akashic Records. And we had a magical experience of connecting for the first time with many of us in person after having taken these courses online.
Yeah. It was amazing. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to just start from the beginning for you with how you entered this rabbit hole that we call the Akashic Records and how you started interfacing with it.
Yeah, thank you. So it's been a few years now, which I'm very grateful for. I really wasn't very spiritual before. I was raised from a Catholic, and that there were a lot of pros and cons. It didn't suit my soul. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of things that happened that pushed me away from having a relationship with a higher power. And in my mid-20s, I met my husband, and a lot of things happened with that. But once we got married, I got into this position where I started to finally feel this sense of safety that I never felt before. And as soon as that happened, and it was about 2020 at this point, ironically, I'm sure a lot of people can have their own awakening story with the experience that 2020 brought us.
Yeah.
And I quit my job because it was awful. I was at this warehouse. Well, I shouldn't say it was awful. It's where I met my husband, so it was great. But there was a lot of mismanagement and bitterness and just negative emotions and feelings and vibes in that space. And so anyway, I started a dog business, dog daycare and boarding in my house. And I started working from home. And it was great. And then before I knew it, I started to actually take time to focus on myself and my health a bit. And one thing led to another I didn't know this at the time, but I was being guided, to various avenues of healing. And I stumbled my way into an emotional eating program because I found that food was my coping mechanism. And I mean, I had other things, of course, like everybody does, but food was my main thing that I got stuck on. And once I started working with her, one of the many things that she recommended was creating and cultivating your own spiritual relationship with your higher power, whatever that means for you. And I had never heard it that way before. I was raised in religion and thought that that was the only way. And it was very negative, like fear-based, that type of a thing.
Stifling.
Yes. And that did not resonate with me. But once I started to hear, like, you can create your own relationship and create this beautiful depth within yourself, like, that was very intriguing. And so I listened to a podcast that she had with Dr. Sue Morter. And she was talking about what she calls the bus stop conversation. So basically the idea that we, before we incarnate, we have this conversation with our guides and the other people that we're going to be here with in spirit. And we sign off on various experiences, and then we come down here and do it. And this was the first time I ever heard that. And
so there's a metaphysical bus stop in which these contracts and negotiations are made.
Yeah, it was so intriguing. And I was like, I've never heard anything like that before. And now it's all I hear about. But before, like, this is so new to me. And I didn't understand it, but it felt right.
Yeah.
It felt good. And it, like, just resonated deep within me. And so from then on, I started listening to her, and then I found Greg Braden, and I started listening to his ancient histories and his geological explorations. And as he was sharing in various videos that I was watching, all of a sudden he was talking about the Akashic Records. And it's the first time I heard of that. I grew up Catholic, and I didn't even hear about the Book of Life and what that even really was.
Right.
And so as he was talking about it, it was just one of those things where, how sometimes there's like trigger words and you're like, that's a weird name. What is that?
Yeah.
And so
that's what Amy said in her workshop. She said, I didn't know what it was, but I heard it and I was like, yes.
Yeah, that was it. And because he just did a brief explanation, I don't even remember exactly what he said, but it was something along the lines of it, being our soul's experience, our soul history. And I was like, whoa, that's really cool. That's a thing.
Yeah. I guess we should probably explain what it is because, there's so many. I tell people that it's a system of guides that exists for anything and everything in the world, every being, every, every organ that you have has record around it, or every experience that will happen in the future. And I just tell people that I'm utilizing it to connect them with their guides and with those energies. And that it's not necessarily a physical, record that you can read, but that I've heard that there is a place in India or somewhere that it is like a physical manifestation of that library.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. I've never heard that. That's amazing. I want to go there. That's so cool. Yeah. And then because everyone has their own way of sharing about
yes.
it. What I typically say is kind of in alignment with a little bit with what Amy shares, but my guides have given me other things to include with it, where it's every word, deed, thought, action, experience that your soul has ever had since its inception. And that includes everything. And it's not just people, it's animals, it's what we consider to be inanimate objects, it's places, it's events. All of these things have an Akashic record where we can go into this space with, the approval of the higher self or higher being or whatever it is, to do whatever it is that we're desiring, in the sense of, like for myself with the emotional eating stuff, it's truly helped me to let go of the attachment that I've had to my past, to rewire my neural pathways and establish new connections and create my own path, to not need to rely on food for love, comfort, etc., and make better choices in my life that is less resistance filled.
Yeah.
Not to say I don't experience resistance, everybody does, but it's just this beautiful, and I almost don't like to call it a tool, but that's kind of what it is. It's this beautiful tool that we all can have access to.
Yeah.
And, there's been a lot of talk that I've been seeing in various groups, like kind of gatekeeping it. And, I don't prescribe to that personally. I think that anybody that truly wants access can gain it if it's in alignment for them to do so.
Absolutely.
I will say that I've experienced a couple of people in, the past few years that in their own attempts of, actually it wasn't even an attempt with one of my clients, but they heard from their guides that they don't currently have access based on the decisions that they're making in their life. But however, if they were to change those decisions and make them more high vibrational, they then would be able to access the records, which is
I'm sure it's different for everybody, but when we talked about alcohol blocking access and cannabis blocking access, I'm sure there's other things that a person, it can cause them to be deluded or not be, basically you're not ready yet to receive what you're going to receive. Because I believe there are these things that kind of put a big blanket over our emotions so we can't quite see it, and we're in a haze, and it's like, it's kind of like how our teacher Amy told us not that we can't go in the records, but maybe not for a client or not for something serious if we're sick.
Yeah, that is definitely recommended.
And I found myself going into the records if I'm about to get sick to try and clear and do the work that I needed to, and to receive the energy, but not to do it for a client or something like that, because you do have that haziness sometimes that you have to move through.
Yeah. And a lot of the times, at least in my personal experience, especially lately, a lot of the time when we're sick, it's because our body is up leveling to a new frequency, and therefore we're not going to have the same access to our clairvoyance and other gifts like that we would have if we were healthier and not experiencing that sickness.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do believe it's a tool or a resource that for me has changed my life, and I really, I do want to eventually teach and create processes for people to work with that energy, because I think it's so important. But I also think there are ways that people can receive information, connect with their intuition, without having gone through that process, or go through a process like you're creating these guided meditations with tuning forks. Before we got on the call, we were just talking about our recording tactics for all of that, tuning forks and how they can get a little buzzy and they can get a little bit irritating. This is a process where we kind of walk people through this landscape, this inner landscape that we all have. And if we can relate it to the astral plane is where we all go when we're sleeping. And it's a little bit different than the Akashic Records. But it is a similar way that we drop into our intuition. Like a client of mine said, it's amazing. I have the most clarity before I go to sleep, and I have these realizations. And to me, it's really similar that we go into a place where we can drop into the frequency where there is no time and space, and it's all light, and it's all in harmony. I don't want to say it's resolved, because maybe it's not ever resolved, but light moves at a different speed than anything else. It's faster. It's when I connect with my guides, I believe they're seeing me in the way that they're contacting me as light, which touches everything and anything because it moves faster than anything. It's a particle, and it's that's the most simple way to explain it is a particle. But it's very fascinating how like time doesn't exist in the same way, that we move so glacially in comparison to those energies.
Yeah. It's very intriguing. There's a couple of things that really stood out when you were sharing that. The part where you have a client where, they're sharing that, they get the most downloads or, the more insights when they're about to fall asleep. Well, I don't know if you listen to like Joe Dispenza or, people like that, but they talk about, the different brain waves. And when we're like, like a quote that I have from somebody named Peter Sage is the answers are in alpha. And so when we're in the alpha state, like, which is a meditative state, that's how a frequency in which it's easier to receive messages and to have a more deeper connection with our intuition and things like that. And so there's more to even be said about what did I say that right?
Theta.
Theta and delta. I was combining the two words. But yeah, like either of those states, it's kind of the same deal where, I don't know a ton about this. I'm just kind of getting into it, but it's super intriguing just hearing that. And then like you were saying, there's a lot of different ways to go about, experiencing these things. And so finding what's in alignment for us is really important, because we all have different ways of getting to the same place.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I believe theta is the place of deep intuition, meditation, and like dreams. But delta is like the deeper sleep where you're just shredding papers, you're clearing out caches, and that's also really important too. As much as it's important to remember, it's important to forget and to store like information. Like I've heard that EMDR works almost like you're putting your eyes into a movement as if you're going to sleep, and that helps you to store information that wasn't otherwise properly stored in traumatic events and make them more digestible.
That's a really interesting way of putting it, and that actually helps me a lot. Now, I haven't experienced EMDR, but I know a lot of people that do. And everybody that I know that has actually went through EMDR has all said really good things about it and how it's really helped them a lot. It's really intriguing because, synchronicities.
Yeah.
And I've been having a lot of things come forward lately about forgetting. So it's really interesting that you brought that up. and then something else is being pinged, and who knows why, but in regards to when we're incarnated, and we have that veil where we forget all of our other lives. And so I don't know why they're leading me down this path. This is totally random, but it's really intriguing to have I don't even know where I'm going with this, but the forgetting, assisting in the healing. And it's not so much like, I don't mean it in like the forgetting so that you don't have the lessons that you've had from that experience, but there's a difference. And I'm not sure what they're guiding me to see.
Well, the interesting thing about forgetting is like, if you ever done a really hard hike or climbed a mountain or had a baby or several things that can happen, had a medicine ceremony, and you don't remember every part for sure. Maybe after the day after, you're like, I'm never doing that again. And 2 weeks later, you're like, I'm ready. And so it is important for us to like, not have this veil over us, but like understanding the gist of the feelings and the emotions that we felt. And we still carry with those emotions from past lives, but we may forget some of the details and we may forget some of the traumas. And then there's some traumas that are stuck with us, and we uncover, like I uncovered this really crazy past life and around my heart, because when I was a kid, I would just sleep with a teddy bear over my heart so I wouldn't get stabbed. And it was like the weirdest thing. And I uncovered a past life about, I think I was like a witch or something, being persecuted in some way, and going through this traumatic experience. But these things, like, you can't make this stuff up. It's pretty incredible. And like, that's definitely like really profound and a huge part of the healing and the uncovering and what we're finding. So I'm grateful for it.
That's a great point too. I recently just went through this whole past life thing, and I mean, there's still a lot more for me to work on with it, but I don't want to like mess with my mic too much, but I have this necklace. It's a mermaid tail.
I love it.
Yeah, it's labradorite and moonstone. And I got it at, I was working with Amy at her, the Conscious Life Expo in LA this past February. And that's where I got it. But during that whole time, I went through this crazy up-leveling, and this past life came forward around me as a mermaid. And there were various things that were happening in my life because of that experience, and I had no idea that it was related until all of these things came forward to be healed. And basically, it's funny because it's kind of the Little Mermaid-esque, but I had this love, and he was a human, and there was this crazy experience where he was on a ship and he was fighting this other ship. I don't know what the reason was or anything like that, but I saw him die. And I don't know a lot about mermaids and their mystical powers, but I got so angry. And so I like did this, like, well, me as a mermaid did like this whirlpool thing, and everybody did not have a good experience after that, because I was so upset that the love of my life was now gone.
You generated a storm.
Yeah, and I couldn't do anything about it because, as a mermaid, if, a bunch of human pirates were to find you, it was not a safe situation. And so I couldn't do anything. But in my rage, I finally did something. And I shouldn't say finally did something, but I reacted to the situation. And in doing so, there's been a dissonance in that part of me accepting me being a human in this life, And so like the phrase fins to feet keeps coming forward. And I think that's going to be a title of something. But it's just so interesting how these other lifetimes we've experienced, like you were saying, even though we've forgotten the experience, the emotions, the potential trauma or whatever is still stored within us because it's in our DNA, which is where the Akashic Records are as well.
In every cell. And that reminds me of, in Spanish, the word storm is tormentas. Ooh. And it's like this acknowledgement of that's where this emotion, it comes from this emotion that when we feel powerful emotion, we can control the weather. And that's part of, I was really interested in this because I went to Ecuador and I heard there was a drought there after I arrived. But when I arrived, I was on a bus and it just started pouring, like downpouring, like everything that you had would soak if you were outside for too long. And so I had been reading this book about manifestation and how there was a Hopi woman, and I think she was 80 years old, and they took her to, I think it was Somalia, to help with manifesting rain because there was so much drought. And in Arizona, there's been just so much drought, but so much cultivation as well. Mm-hmm. And they've been doing this for thousands of years to bring the rain. And the quote from the book was, "If your heart is pure, then it will rain." Ooh. And I was like, this is really beautiful. Like being that I live near Seattle, it seems to happen a lot where people bring this rain. But I was like, how powerful are we? And we're not taking responsibility for that.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. That's one of my biggest soul missions, and I've received this in the records countless times, is that, we are love, we are light, we are these beautiful things, and a part of why I'm here is to help everybody remember that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, this like soul memory, and I want to get to like your story more because I feel like I feel like it continues, and it goes somewhere. But I wanted to also just drop this in there that there has been like a very, for me, palpable shift in the veil that happened, and this was about 2021 when I started to I was doing a meditation. And all of a sudden I was in a past life, and I'd never been in the records before. And I was like, okay, like this is happening, we are all remembering whether or not we are completely aware of it and completely owning it.
Yeah. That's so amazing. And honestly, during your story with like the rain and, I just had chills during the whole thing. And then so as soon as you said that it rained when you got there, it was just like, boom, full body chills.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Exciting time to be alive. A lot to witness.
That's for sure. And I mean, I've heard it said a lot that there's a lot of reasons why we're all here at this specific time. And a lot of us are here to assist, with the up-leveling of the whole earth and creating a more holistic, wholesome experience instead of living in so much pain and turmoil.
I love it. Yeah. That was so exciting.
It is. Yeah.
Wow, what a time to be alive, to support the process of remembering on this planet. That concludes the first part of our interview with Angel Marie. Thank you so much for tuning in and sharing with us. And I want to connect it all back today to the shifts that you feel on the planet, the liminal frequencies that you've been dropping into, that have been expansive. And I invite you to tune into your own liminal frequencies to find the answer. We will see you on part 2 of the episode. Ciao.